Hello and welcome to Antinatalism this week. My mother is not well again and I have to spend a lot of time looking after her. As a result, this will be another faceless video. By now, you would already know about the plane that crashed, killing all but one passenger. The building on which it crashed was hostel of medical students and it killed potential doctors while they were having lunch in over there. This is Pratik Joshi and his wife traveling to London, taking his three children along with them. I don't want to politicize this tragedy to make it about antinatalism, but at the same time, I can't help as an antinatalist to think about the risks which are imposed upon us and those which we impose upon our children. This tweet gives us a sense of what happened. I live in Ahmedabad and this crash happened just 2 to 3 kilometers from my home. You might see photos online, but if you had witnessed it in person, the wreckage, the bodies, you wouldn't be able to stomach it. Several resident doctors tragically lost their lives while eating lunch in their hostel, which the plane crashed into. Meanwhile, one person from the plane survived with only minor injuries. The randomness of it all is hard to process, still shaken. This is not the first plane crash. Every time there are shocking news and emotional reactions. But we don't pay attention to the idea that the randomness of it all has always been hard to process. This incident is not directly related to antinatalism, I know, but it's a reminder that the arguments for antinatalism are not in abstract philosophical vacuum. There was a casting call advertisement for an antinatalist film. I say there was because it already expired on 15th of June. But we at least know that someone is making a film on antinatalism. Shooting happens on 1st and 2nd of July. It says the director is Lucas Grisels. I don't know how to contact Lucas, but the address mentioned is Winter Park, Florida, United States. So if you have any further information about the film, please let me know. The Conversation had an article, If People Stopped Having Babies, How Long Would It Be Before Humans Were All Gone? By Michael Little, who is professor of anthropology. The article itself is not directly on antinatalism, but it brainstorms on what would happen if we stopped having children. There are some dystopian scenarios imagined and some demographic data. For example, this image in the article shows population growth so far in different regions of the world. As you can see, the major contributor so far has been Asia. European population has remained almost constant for the last 100 years. African population has started to accelerate further. It is generally agreed that the world population will peak at 10 billion in around 2080s. Childfree activism and reproductive norms in the 21st century is a research article by Alexei Anisin. The article claims that it has done first of its kind research in child-free and antinatalist communities. So far, all the studies in this area have been around individual decision making of not having children. But this study reorients attention towards the collective dimension of child-free based advocacy by analyzing the actions of groups that directly or indirectly advocate for child-free based decision making. There are 8 organizations studied which are presented in this table. It mentions the organization, the focus of this advocacy, the theme they follow, the year of founding, and the country. I won't go through each of them, but we can see that most of them are child-free or environmentally motivated organizations. Voluntary Human Extinction Movement in some way is an antinatalist organization, albeit human-centric antinatalism. Antinatalism International counts explicitly as an antinatalist organization, but I'm not sure how accurate the advocacy focus is. Another point is that they missed so many other organizations, for example, antinatalist advocacy or Stop Having Kids and so on. So take this with a grain of salt, but still an interesting study of its own kind. Amanda Sukenick and Matti Häyry were invited for a special lecture on antinatalism for students of the class on Bioethics at the University of Turin, Italy. Professor Luca Lo Sapio organized it for his class. Luca Lo Sapio himself is an antinatalist and has appeared on the Exploring Antinatalism podcast previously. This lecture was about 1 hour 40-minute long interaction. Both Amanda and Matti presented their argument from postnatal mental imposition and the consequent Omelas child during first 43 minutes, which was then followed by questions and answers. They talked about the limitations of already existing arguments and the motivation behind their own arguments for antinatalism. David Benetta's axiological asymmetry, the quality of life, consent, and risk arguments are all valid arguments for antinatalism. However, they have limitations when it comes to conveying the idea to a lay layperson. In their search for an argument which ordinary people like us on streets could relate to, Amanda and Matti claimed to have devised the postnatal mental imposition argument. Julio Cabrera was not discussed in this context. His work was referenced in the light of his criticisms of David Benatar. Now, whether this new argument from postnatal mental imposition is effective or not was an open question and discussed at length. Overall, it was an interesting lecture, but if you have already gone through Amanda's and Matti's work, this is not really news. The news, as Matti puts it, is that Professor Luca Lo Sapio giving an entire course on antinatalism. Matti Häyry will be speaking at a philosophy festival in Finland called Park Philosophy. The festival runs from 15th July to 19th July, and Matti's talk is scheduled on 16th. He will be talking about no new people, no world, no purpose, but in what order. No new people is antinatalism, no world being extinctionism, and no purpose as in nihilism. I think that must be existential nihilism. He also made a promotional video with one of his songs that he will be singing at the festival on the Exploring Antinatalism channel. Is a bad future better than no future at all? Is a poorly researched article on Only Sky. This is written by someone called Adam Lee and in a way is a representative of those numerous articles that have come out after the recent IVF bombing misinterpreting antinatalism. Adam agrees that it is wrong to bring someone who will have a life not worth living, like say someone who will experience terrible suffering or people who are carriers of an awful genetic disease. However, he says aside from those special cases, this argument doesn't hold up. But Adam does not question why we think it is better to not bring those people whose lives won't be worth living. It's because we think that suffering in their life will be a harm to them, and preventing that harm is good even if they don't come into existence as a result of that prevention. But this is true for the lives which would become worth living as well. Whatever little harm they have to endure is still good to be prevented if done without any cost to them. And if we don't start even those lives, it does not cost them at all. They are not deprived of anything to start with. This argument is all over the internet for anyone to look at. And there are some good criticisms to this as well, which are readily available. But Adam does not bother about any of this and quickly moves on to the consent argument. He makes the same classic mistake of assuming consent when it is impossible to obtain one. If a person is brought to an emergency room badly injured and unconscious, it is reasonable for doctors to assume they want to live and try to save them, even if they can't know for sure in the moment. So here the doctors make a reasonable assumption that the person wants to live on and will be glad to have been saved. Similarly, we can make a reasonable assumption that the child that we give birth to will be glad to have been born. He asks, would a reasonable person wish to exist? Would an average human being of normal health and intelligent regret ever having been born? Or would most people say that all things considered, they are glad to have the precious and priceless experience of being alive? The problem is, you can ask these questions only after bringing them into existence. And once they are here, they would already have interests in existing thanks to the evolutionary selection. So his analogy of existing person whose life has to be saved does not fit neatly to the case whose life has to be started. And then he brings out the why don't you kill yourself argument. If you believe that all existence is unbearable suffering, then why are you still here? At this point, we see Adam's ignorance in all its glory. Life is bad, but so is death, or at least the process of dying is ugly and painful, or at least difficult. A whole section of Sarah Perry's book, Every Cradle is a Grave, talks about this. Anyway, this was a mediocre article, but I thought of addressing it as a way of highlighting the kind of content that is being produced since IVF bombing. By contrast, here is a better article, but it's more of a personal blog on Transcending Biology, a critique of natural reverence by Jayita Das. Jayita highlights the mismatch in our bodies, which are evolved to hunt in savannas, and our environment demanding something else altogether. Similar to Peter Wiesel's she presents evolution of human consciousness as an evolutionary mistake. She provides two possibilities from here. Either transhumanism, where we upload our minds to another medium and get rid of our bodily limitations, or antinatalism, where we stop producing more of such bodies. She concludes, whether through technological transcendence or voluntary extinction, the rational response is to stop treating our animal nature as sacred and to start treating consciousness as something worth liberating from its biology biological prison. Jaita seems to be writing regularly on her Quora blog Antinatalism Safe Space. It is an interesting place to follow. Shashi Antinatalist put out a video whose title literally translates to Debt of Mother's Milk. Did the parents do a favor by giving birth to a child? Know the bitter truth. The video is in Hindi, and since it is in Indian context, the title itself is appropriately provocative. Mother's milk is used as a very emotional phrase in Indian culture. I don't know if it has origins in any genuine literature. Maybe it does. But this phrase has been popularized by Bollywood films which rely on overly emotional discourses. In this video, Shashi addresses the question, do children owe to their parents? Traditionally, the answer to this question has always been assumed to be yes. Since parents have provided to their children all they can, children are in debt. Shashi goes through historical origins of this thinking before refuting it and pointing flaws in it. Of course, this is all in line with the core of antinatalism. She also provides practical advice for existing parents, children, and their relationship. There was an almost 2-hour long debate about whether we should believe in God between Matt Dillahunty and Matthew Adelstein. The debate is on Matt's channel, and in that debate were many references to antinatalism. Lawrence responded to those references, talking about the flaws in Matthew Adelstein's arguments for believing in God. It was good work by Lawrence, and I am not going to respond to the response video, but Lawrence didn't criticize Dillahunty here. Dillahunty is an atheist and a staunch anti-antinatalist. Now, it could be that Lawrence has already responded to Dillahunty's opposition to antinatalism in the past, so he didn't feel the need to repeat, or maybe the pro-God arguments were in more need of being defeated. At any rate, it was interesting to watch. And then he made a short video of less than 2 minutes talking about other animals procreate, so why can't humans do? This is one of the starting arguments in the Antinatalist Handbook by Lawrence. So maybe he will do more videos on other arguments in the handbook, which will be super interesting to watch. Just a reminder that there is an antinatalism meetup organized by Victor Munoz. It is on June 22nd, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific time. It will be a discussion on 2 films made from opposite viewpoints. First one is The Birth Gap Part 1. It is a 2-part documentary by Stephen J. Shaw on the so-called problem of declining fertility rates. Only the first part is free to watch on YouTube, and that's what has been included for this discussion. The second one is I Wish You Were Never Born by Jack Boswell, which features many antinatalists in the UK and US, including Lawrence Anton, Danny Shine, Amanda Sukenick, Matt from Life Sucks, Kirk Wooler, and Doug Stanhope. A new State of World Population report was released by United Nations Population Fund UNFPA on 11th of June. It is called the Real Fertility Crisis. UNFPA surveyed 14,000 people in 14 countries about their fertility intentions. The main claim of the report is that there is a fertility crisis in the world across all countries, but it is not about low fertility or population collapse as some of the pronatalists like to have you believe, nor is it about population explosion. It is the mismatch between desired fertility and actual fertility. This means that there are a lot of people who are left without being able to have children even if they wanted to. And at the same time, there are a lot of unintended pregnancies. This chart, for example, shows percentages of unintended pregnancies, percentage of unfulfilled desires to have children, and both. Both here means individuals had children when they didn't want to and didn't have when they actually wanted to. One observation which could not escape my antinatalist eyes was the high percentage of unintended pregnancies that are still happening. In countries like Morocco and South Africa, almost half of pregnancies are not intended. United States, the world's richest country, has unintended pregnancies which are comparable to Brazil and India. And with one exception of Indonesia in this particular chart, percentage of unintended pregnancies is always higher than the desire to have children. We are talking percentages here, but the number of people who were brought into this world due to negligence must be staggering. The report goes through many different aspects and nuances of this crisis, like treatment of women in different countries, changing demographics, family care structures, adolescents' fertility, which is a major contributor to declining fertility rates, and so on. The whole report is 160 page long and has many interesting infographics for anyone interested in this subject. But BBC cautions us against drawing any conclusions from it. It says the survey, which is a pilot for research in 50 countries later this year, is limited in its scope. When it comes to age groups within countries, for example, the sample sizes are too small to make conclusions. And those were some of the stories about antinatalism this week. See you next time.